Alright, so our intro to chapter 3 is going to be with factoring. So again, you guys have seen this in Algebra 1, so we're just reviewing it today. So when we factor, we're breaking down our polynomial into smaller pieces. So to factor this, we need two numbers that multiply and give us -5 and add up to -4. So they have to multiply and give us the last number and add to the middle number. So what are two numbers that multiply and give us -5 that add to -4?
-5 and 1.
Awesome, -5 and +1. So we're going to put those into our parentheses. And we have x minus 5, because it's a -5, and x plus 1. We can take this one step further. If we set this equation equal to 0, we would just set each of these parentheses equal to 0. So we have x minus 5 is equal to 0 and x plus 1 is equal to 0. So we get x is equal to 5 and x is equal to -1. Because we just add 5 to both sides here and subtract 1 on both sides here. So we just split it up into our two separate equations. And then we get two different answers. Any questions?
Is it always the last digit or the last exponent?
For these, yes, because you're just setting each of these equal to 0. So all you're doing is like that one math step to get the x all by itself. So here we just need to add 5 to both sides to get that 5 over there. So yeah, it's just going to be this, but the sign changes. All right, let's take a look at number 2. So here we need two factors of 5 that add up and give us 6. What would our factors be?
5 and 1.
5 and 1. Perfect. Because 5 times 1 is 5, and 5 plus 1 is 6. Awesome. So we put those into our parentheses. We have x plus 5 and x plus 1. We set each of our parentheses equal to 0. So we have x plus 5 is equal to 0, and x plus 1 is equal to 0. So x is equal to -5, and x is equal to -1. All right, let's take a look at number 3. So not always are we going to start with a leading coefficient of 1, so like our number out front. So the first two, our number out front was 1. Our number out front was 1. But this one, it's not. So we have to do something a little different here. So what we do is we multiply the first number and the last number. We got -8. And now we need two factors of -8 that add up and give us 7. So what would they be?
-8 and 1.
Perfect. Oh, well, -8 plus 1 would be -7, but we're looking for a +7. So let's try again.
Oh. +8 and -1.
Awesome. +8 and -1. So we put those into our parentheses. So we have x plus 8 and x minus 1. We can't forget that we started with this leading coefficient of 2. So we need to make sure that we include that 2 in our parentheses. And how we would do that is just divide each of our numbers by that leading coefficient. If it goes in pretty, we simplify. If it does not, we move it to the front. So here, 8 divided by 2 is 4, so that's a pretty number, so we simplify it, so we get x plus 4. 1 divided by 2, it does not simplify to a whole number, so we would just take the 2 and move it in front of the x. So this would be 2x minus 1. So this is only when your leading coefficient is not 1. So since we started with 2, we had to make sure we did this extra step. And now we can find our zeros by setting each of these equations equal to 0. So we get x is equal to negative 4. And for this next one, we add 1 to both sides. So 2x is equal to 1. Then we divide by 2. So x is going to be equal to 1/2. All right, for number 4, again, we have a leading coefficient that's not 1, so what would we need to do first?
Three times 2.
3 times 2. 3 times negative 2, which would give us negative 6. And then, what are 2 factors of negative 6 that add and give us negative 5?
Negative 6 and positive 1.
Negative 6 and positive 1. Perfect. So in our parentheses, we're going to put x minus 6 and x plus 1. What do we need to do next?
Divide 3.
Divide both of our numbers by 3. If it goes in pretty, we simplify. So 6 divided by 3 is 2. So we have x minus 2. If it does not go in pretty, we move it out front. So we have 3x plus 1. What do we do next?
Zero.
Set them both equal to 0. So x minus 2 is equal to 0. 3x plus 1 is equal to 0. We add 2 to both sides, so we get x is equal to 2. We subtract 1 from both sides here, so we get 3x is equal to negative 1. Then divide by 3. So x is equal to negative 1/3.
Positive 4
4
and
negative
negative 3.
4 and negative 3. Perfect. So we have x plus 4 and x minus 3. So now we need to set each of these equal to 0. So we can't forget about that x out front. So we have x is equal to 0, x plus 4 is equal to 0, and x minus 3 is equal to 0. So x is equal to 0. That's one of our answers. We don't need to do anything else. This next one, we just subtract 4 on both sides. So we get x is equal to negative 4. And the last one, we add 3 to both sides. So x is equal to 3. All right, number 6 is just like this one. What's our greatest common factor that we can take out?
X.
X. So then we're left with x squared plus 4x plus 3. What are 2 factors of positive 3 that add up and give us positive 4?
3 times 1.
3 times 1. So we can't forget about the x out front. We just leave it out front for now. And what goes inside of our parentheses?
X
X
plus 3.
plus 3.
X plus 3, and x plus 1. Then we just set each thing equal to 0, so x is equal to 0, x plus 3 is equal to 0, and x plus 1 is equal to 0. X is equal to 0. We need to subtract 3 from both sides, so we get x is equal to negative 3. And then we subtract 1 from both sides, so we get x is equal to negative 1. All right, let's go to 7. So what should we do first here?
Take out an X.
Take out an x. So we're left with 5x squared plus 13x minus 6. What do we do next?
Find the factors of negative 30.
Awesome, so we multiply the 5 and the negative 6 together, so we need our factors of negative 30 that add up to positive 13. So what would they be?
Ten and 3.
We did 10 and 3. One of them has to be negative.
3. Negative 2.
Yeah, 15 and negative 2 work. But just to show you guys, 10 and 3, one of them has to be negative because they have to multiply to negative 30. So if the 10 was negative, that wouldn't add up to positive 13. If the 3 was negative, that wouldn't add up to positive 13. So we would not be able to use 10 and 3. But 15 and 2 works, but which one has to be negative?
The 2.
The 2.
Perfect. So then what goes in our parentheses?
X plus 15 and X minus 2.
Awesome. X plus 15 and x minus 2. And then what do we do next?
Set them all equal to 0.
Before we do that, we can't forget that we started with a leading coefficient of 5. So we need to divide our numbers here by 5. So we have x. If it goes in pretty, we simplify. So 15 divided by 5 would be 3. If it does not go in pretty, we move it out front. So then we have 5x minus 2. And now we set each of them equal to 0. So we have x is equal to 0, x plus 3 is equal to 0, and 5x minus 2 is equal to 0. And then we solve. So x is equal to 0 is one answer. We subtract 3 from both sides here. So x is equal to negative 3. And then for the third one, we need to add 2 to both sides. So we get 5x is equal to 2. Divide both sides by 5. So x is equal to 2 over 5. Any questions on this one? All right, last one, number 8. What do we do first?
Take out an X.
Take out an x. So then we're left with 3x squared minus 11x plus 10. What do we do next?
Multiply the 3 and the 10.
Multiply the 3 and the 10. So we get 30. So we need our two factors of 30 that add up to 11. Negative 11. So what would they be?
Negative 5 and negative 6.
Negative 5 and negative 6. Awesome. Sophie, you should probably mute yourself if you're going to play music. Thank you. So we have x times x minus 5 times x minus 6. What do we do next?
divided by 3.
Divide our numbers by 3. So we have x is equal to 0. This is x, and then x times 3x minus 5. And then the second one simplifies. Negative 6 divided by 3 would be negative 2. Then we set them equal to 0. So we have x is equal to 0. 3x minus 5 is equal to 0. And x minus 2 is equal to 0. We add 5 to both sides. So 3x is equal to 5. And then we divide by 3. So we get x is equal to 5/3. And then for the last one, we add 2 to both sides, so x is equal to 2. So that is it for the notes today. Just a little introduction on factoring.